Welcome back to the shop, everyone. This week's video takes place in 2024 week 6, that is February 5th to February 11th, and the goal for this week is to get the dash installed on the car. That's one of the main things I need to do in order to get this thing on the road is dash, heater, all hooked up and running, heater hoses, which is what I'm working on right now, the gauges, all that has to be installed. So right now, I'm just putting heater hoses between the two heater pipes and the heater core. I'm not doing anything with the AC at this point in time, mainly because I don't need AC right now. I know I'm going to be tearing the car apart again pretty soon, so I don't want to have to, evacuate the system at that time. So just a couple of heater hoses. So what I've got here is I picked up two 90 degree 5/8 heater hoses, and I'm just cutting them to length and getting them installed on the barb coming through the firewall and then on the actual heater core itself. So what I eventually end up doing is I smarten up and I just put a little bit of WD-40 on the inside of the hose here, and that just helps it slide on and off while I'm test fitting. And then I've got I'm just gonna put some hose clamps on either end to finish it off. With this first heater hose on, we can move over onto the second one. Same thing, kind of get it roughly to length by eye, put it on, see if it fits, and then throw a couple hose clamps on and tighten it down. So now that I have that done, I'm just looking in the bag of parts because for some reason I thought that the main heater box came with hose clamps for the vents that go onto it. But looking, I don't have any hose clamps, and there are some kind of like tabs on there, so I don't think I really need it. But this is why I was looking. That left hose kind of popped off, so I just quickly threw it back on, and I'm just making sure that the rest of these are fully engaged as well. So now what we're going to do is we are going to mount the heater brain box back on the plate. So I'd taken it off because I was looking to see if there was a code on it for the Bluetooth app. That reminds me, I need to call the company. I wonder if they're open right now. Well, they aren't open. They're only open until 5 Central, and it's just after. So, oh well. So what I'm doing here is I had previously tapped these out to 1024, but almost everything else that I've been doing in the shop lately is 1032. So I am just retapping these bolts out to 1032. I also have a ton of 1032 fasteners, so there's 2 holes here. I'm just going to very quickly tap these out and make it so I can actually put bolts in them, and then we will get that remounted. Now that that is remounted, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a spade connector back on the ends of one of the thermostat wires. So when I was pulling it off of the thermostat, it's pulled the wire out of the end. So I will just put a new end on this and it should be good as new. The reality is I should be putting some heat shrink on there just to give it a little bit more strength, but I will do that later, and if I end up pulling the end off again, well, I'll just put a new end on. So since I want this in here semi-permanently, I am just replacing some of the non-lock nuts with lock nuts, so that way as I'm driving, this thing doesn't rattle and shake apart and come off. Alright, so what I'm doing now is I've got these through bulkhead connectors for my power and my ground wires, and they're just on there super loose right now. So what I'm doing is I am tightening up the nuts on the backside. So the backside are on the inside of the fender just above the wheel, and I am holding the head of the bolt on from this side. So right now I'm just kind of like standing outside the car, reaching my left hand in to access the bolt, and then reaching my right arm around the window and into the fender well. This would be impossible to do if I had the fender on. And in a second here, I will switch this angle just so you can see exactly what I'm doing in order to get this tightened. So just grabbed a Allen key and so put it in there so I can tighten it. So this is all that I'm doing right here. I'm just, reaching around the outside of the car, putting a finger on the nuts, and then tightening down from the inside. It's tight enough for now. I don't think I should have any issues with it. But what I should probably really do is grab a socket of some sort, get it on there so I can get it tightened down a little bit more. But it's tight enough. All right, so with that part done, we are going to move over onto wiring in the horn and the line lock switch. So I'm going to use a 3-pin DTM connector. So the way this works is I've got ground coming up from the dash, and that's going to go into the steering column, or the steering wheel, I should say. And then from the steering wheel, I've got the horn button, which is in the middle, and then I've got the trigger for my line lock, which I'm going to use the cruise control off button to do. So when I hold the cruise control off button, it'll actually activate my line lock. So it just makes it so that I can have line lock on the steering wheel without any obnoxious buttons. So yeah, you've seen me put Deutsch connectors on a ton. It's nothing new here. Cut the wires, strip them, pin them, connect the two ends together. Oh, but it looks like I'm actually cleaning out the car a little bit before I do that. I was just getting everything ready, I guess. And then clean up and then I'll do that. So one of the things that I found as I was doing this wiring is that the ground that I had run for this either wasn't long enough or just wasn't routed super nicely. So I'm going to run a new ground wire for the little cost of the wire in the end. I would rather have this kind of nice and easy, or no, I think what it actually was I ran like a 14 gauge ground. I ran just like a ridiculously big ground and I didn't need to, and that ground would not fit inside the Deutsch connector terminal. And so instead of bastardizing the wire and like clipping a bunch of the threads off, I just said it's like 2 feet of wire, maybe. Just rerun the ground. Just, stop being lazy. So that's what I did. I stopped being lazy. I reran the ground in an appropriately sized gauge of wire. And then we'll keep on wiring up this connector. Alright, so now that I've got that connected, what do I want to do? Well, I want to test it, make sure that what I've got is working and, I didn't mess any connections up. So plug the Dominator back in because that's what controls the line lock. And I hit the horn. I'm hearing the horn relay go, no problem. I hit the button for the line lock and I get nothing. So I got to troubleshoot this. Well, I didn't have the grounds for the line lock on. I ran the wires, but I never actually connected it to a ground for the chassis. So doing a bit more testing now. It's still not working. I don't know what's going on here. And then I realized I never put a fuse in for that relay because I wasn't using it yet. So I go and I test it again and it works. So problem solved. Line lock's good. It's clicking on nice and solid. And the horn relay is working. So we're going to move on to finishing up some more wiring. When I was working on the headlight switch earlier, when I was pulling this out, the dome light wire pulled out of the connector. So I'm just putting a new end on that, putting it back in. And I'm just going down and retightening all of the crimps on this just to make sure none of them pull out at any point in time. Okay, moving on. What am I doing now? Well, I am connecting my laptop to the Holley Dominator, and what I'm doing here is I'm checking how much throttle I get. So I know that the top of this pedal is hitting some of the structure for the dash, and I wanted to see how much throttle I get. I only got 85% throttle, and that's just not enough. So I'm trying to bend the metal with a punch and a hammer, and that just didn't work for shit. I couldn't get enough leverage in there. I didn't want to risk beating anything up, so I was like, okay. So plan B, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a pilot hole in this support beam, and then I'm going to take a nice big stepper bit, and I am just going to hog the metal out in that area where the pedal is hitting and hopefully get a bit more throttle out of this. be a little hard to see on the screen there, but I am now getting 100% TPS, which I am very happy with. So now that I've been drilling in the car, it's a bit of a mess. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a second here, grab the vacuum, and clean out all of those metal chips from the car. Okay, so one of the things that I noticed when I was working on some of this wiring is that this cage tube is not fully welded to the outrigger that goes from the through floor subframe to the outside plate there. So you can see I wrote on there weld me because when I noticed that, it's like, well, we need to get this welded up. So I'm just cleaning the metal now. And because this is such a tight area, I tigged the rest of the cage, but I opted to be quick and kind of lazy here, and I'm going to grab my MIG and use the MIG to weld this, and then also finish welding the tube on the bottom of that plate. So unfortunately something happened and I didn't actually get the video of me welding this all the way around, but we're going to jump underneath where I am welding the rest of that square tube to that plate. The first thing I'm going to do for this is I'm going to loosen off these fuel lines. Since I am going to be welding and I'm using the MIG welder and there's going to be sparks, I kind of want to keep this out of the way, away from anything hot or from getting any sparks in there. So I'm also going to wrap it with some flame retardant paper, just trying to be a bit as careful as I can. I don't want to blow myself up. So after a brief little bit of just cleaning up a little bit of the inside of the car, we are going to start working on this kind of dash support piece. So this is what my wiper module bolts to. And you can see there's 2 bolts on the support, or on the steering column support that it bolts to. Then it goes out to the, I don't know if that's like the A-pillar or the kick panel area, but the cage is in the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify that bracket a little bit and see if I can get it to kind of clear around the cage. But before I do any of that, I need to get the dash back in the car. So what am I doing here? I am looking at kind of the hardware for the dash. I know I've got some new pieces that came in, so I'm just going through the hardware, and I'm going to get some of the hardware installed in the car that I need in order to mount the dash. So, fun fact, I found out that this is not actually the right nutserts and bolts for the dash. These are actually too small. I needed, 5/16 bolts, and these are only 1/4. But I'm going to use them on this side, and I think I might use them on the other side. It's going to hold. It's not going to go anywhere. So right here I put those nut certs. No, not nut certs. Whatever they're called. I put them in both locations, not knowing which one I'm going to use. You'll see later on I do remove one again. But yeah, so this is the long and short of it. This bracket, I believe, goes on those 2 bolts and then connects over onto the kick panel area there with another bolt, and that adds a little bit of rigidity in there. And as I said, that's where my wiper module is going to mount. So I'm just grabbing the dash right now and grabbing the dash pad just to see exactly which screws the dash pad screws into. And now I'm just kind of checking out which hardware I'm going to use to bolt the dash into the car itself. I didn't actually have the hardware that I think I need, because it's supposed to be like some screws with super fat heads. So I make do with some of the hardware from the kit. Fortunately, I'm not going to be installing a ton of the dash trim and stuff, so some of these parts are hopefully extra. So just doing a little test run of the hardware, make sure it will work, and it does. It's not right, but whatever. So since I think I'm doing the final dash install, I am going to put this heater ducting back on, screw it on, and then let's get this dash in the car. Kind of get some of the venting routed where it needs to be. With it routed, we're gonna get kind of some of the hardware started. So on the right side at the bottom, I was just putting the bolt into that nut that I had put on to the kick panel area. I'm putting a few of the bolts into the top hardware. And at this point, the dash is fairly solid. So now I can start working on that support piece again for the wiper module, and I can start figuring out this bracket and how it's going to work. So it's been really awkward to get it like on the bolts. So I finally get it in there and I start just tightening this up just to kind of see where it's going to land on the kick panel side. So after getting this bolted up, I realized if I ever needed to drop the steering column, that bracket would have to come off, which means undoing those two bolts, the one bolt on the kick panel area, and I don't think I had to do that. So I watched a few videos, and yeah, that bracket is supposed to go above the steering column brackets. So that's why I'm undoing all of these bolts, so I can drop the steering column down, so I can put that bracket on top. And during this time, you'll see there's the two wires for the brake switch, the orange and the purple wire. In my head, I'm sitting there thinking, don't pinch those wires, don't pinch those wires. Make sure you don't pinch the wires. That would be really bad. I think you can see where this is going. But in any case, we're going to keep on going. I've got that bracket kind of up now, and I'm kind of putting the steering column back in just to get this test fit. I'm kind of seeing what I need to do to this bracket in order to get it to bolt into the kick panel area there. So there's this round tube that I'm heating up right here, and this is pressing up against the cage bar. So my plan is heat it up, beat the crap out of it, compress the tube a bit, and hopefully that helps fix it. But the part was only very gingerly held together, so it split while I was beating the crap out of it. But since it split, I can just use the vise to crush down the tube. I don't have to use the hammer. And another kind of test fit just to see if it might work, and I think it might. Maybe it's gonna need some more working, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a bolt, put it through the two holes in that part that split, tighten it down, and just weld those two back together because I need them to be together for that bracket to work. So I'll just quickly throw a couple tacks on it to hold it together. I also noticed that when this was in the car, the very tip of it was like hitting the body, so I'm just gonna grind it down a little bit. After this, we're gonna do some more test fitting in the car. We're gonna do some adjusting and try and get it to work. after all this dicking around with this, I actually end up giving up on this specific bracket because the cage is there. I don't actually need this bracket. I will design and cut out a new one. As I said, the only thing this is doing is mounting the wiper module, so I don't need all the strength coming off the steering column going to the car. All I need this for is to mount a bracket, so I will design and cut out a new one. I'm not worried about it. Let's just scrap this stock piece. It's not doing what I want it to do. It's a pain in the ass. Just get it gone. So with that out of the way, I'm going to bolt in this bracket to the car. That bracket is what the dash bolts to, so I'm going to bolt that, get that bracket bolted, and then I haven't actually put the bolt in for the dash to that bracket yet, but I'll get around to it. It's not a big deal. And we're just going to tighten some hardware for the top of the dash to hold it in. Now that the dash is tight, I'm going to run the wires for the dash through the big hole there and just get them kind of into place. And I think it's at this point I noticed that I crushed the wires for the brake lights. So that was really dumb of me, and what I'm doing right now is I'm just checking to see if the wires are intact in any way or if they are fully crushed, and I get no power, no lights, no nothing. So what I end up doing is I'm going to end up cutting those wires and putting new ends on them before the crushes. But I guess before that, let's just put the steering column back up. That way I don't, run risking crushing those wires second time. So yeah, we'll just throw the steering wheel back up into place. So I don't need the second body nut, so pull it out, put it back in the bag with the hardware. And we can start working on hooking up all of the dash wiring. Now the three main dash wires are done. Let's get the gauges hooked up and let's just plug all the connections in and throw the dash in. what's the first thing you do after you get your dashes all plugged in? That's right, you test them out. And then you wonder why they don't work. Turn signal works. The light, the high beam, the right beam going to the speedometer works. Illumination works, but the gauges themselves don't work. So let's do some troubleshooting. Grab my test light, check to see if the dash has power. It does not. So let's check in the fuse box, and turns out fuse is blown. So let's grab a different fuse from somewhere else in the fuse box, replace it, and let's test. And hey, look at that, gauges now work. So somewhere along the lines, I blew that fuse. Maybe when I was pulling the wires through the dash, maybe I had the battery still turned on and it just touched and blew that fuse. Oopsie. But hey, it works. The gauges work. I'm okay with this. What's the thing that I am checking and testing now? That's an excellent question. Oh, my dash lights. For some reason, my dash lights didn't work. So the reason why my dash lights didn't work is I had them programmed wrong in the software. I had them programmed as plus 12 volt outputs, but I wired them as ground outputs. So as soon as I redid the programming and sent that to the ECU, now my warning light, my caution light, and my shift light, didn't test shift light, but those should all work now. So sweet. We're gonna move on to putting the heater controls in. Heater controls, 4 bolts. I just grabbed those out of the kit. Put those on. We'll connect the heater controls into the main unit, and then there's also a connector that goes onto the heater box itself. So we'll get those connected. So now that the heater controls are in, it's time to install all of the vents on the dash pieces. So this takes a bit of work because I've got 2 defroster lines coming to the front of the defroster, which I gotta work in there and get my hands in there, and it's kind of a pain in the ass, but whatever, who cares? And then the rest of the vents go super easy. Those were super easy. I was happy with those once I got them routed. Do kind of like to give you a bird's eye view of what I'm dealing with. So, you know, you can see I'm just kind of peering in through the top of the dash just to get these in place and on, and you know, it's a bit of messing around, but all in all, it actually wasn't too bad. trying to figure out where this connector goes, and I can't quite figure it out. So what I eventually do is I just pull out my phone and I throw it on video mode. And with it on video mode, I kind of flip the camera around and whatever, and then I put it under the dash so I can see exactly what I'm looking at under there. And I instantly find it. It's on the front face. It's not around the outside of it at all. So we get this last connector in there. And from there, we can hook up the heater and test and make sure everything's kind of working. So yeah, just turn this fan on, crank it up, you know, check that I'm getting stuff out of the vents, change the direction, and yeah, I'm getting stuff out of defrost, I'm getting it out of the dash vents. Everything is working pretty okay. So the next thing we're going to install is the stereo. So, yeah. The stereo has a cage, so this cage is larger than the one that's on the car, so I end up having to modify out the location where the cage installs into. So I take a Dremel, I take a file for the very corners that the Dremel can't reach, and then I wire it all in with a Deutsch connector. So with this very nice stereo in, we of course have to test it out. And nothing. So let's check the fuse panel. Still nothing. Why not? So check some more fuses, just making sure everything works, and then kind of you'll see a bit of sparks here in a second, I think. Oh, maybe it didn't actually catch it. Anyways, I messed up and I grounded out one of the wires, and yeah. So anyways, what had happened is when I blew the fuse for the gauges, I moved that fuse, or I moved a fuse that was the same value down to the gauges, and then the fuse that I removed was for the interior clock or the battery feed to the deck. So once I moved the fuse back, or threw another fuse in there, I think I robbed it from somewhere else. Once I did that, the deck started working. I can connect to my phone. All of that's working. That's good. We're happy. And after all that work, it's everybody's favorite time, cleanup time. So now that I got everything cleaned up and the dash installed, everything for the dash is done. So I don't need to do anything more there. There are some things that I need to do here. So one thing is the belt for the Pro Charger is currently touching the idler, and when I look behind the idler, I see that the adjustment bolt is pressed up against the air conditioning brackets. So what I'm going to do is pull the idler off, pull the Pro Charger off, pull the air conditioner, pull the air conditioning compressor off, get the air conditioner bracket off the car, and I'm going to modify it. So on this particular day, I made a number of catastrophically bad decisions. So one of the things while I was undoing this tensioner, I didn't think too much about it. I was just cranking the tensioner off, and I ended up snapping it and breaking the brass bushing that I'm undoing right now. So I was unscrewing it so much that it actually, the O-ring essentially like popped off the brass, and then it just tore the shit out of the brass as it was going. So that happened, and then once I eventually get the pulley off of the Pro Charger, like what I forgot to do is I forgot to undo the bolt on the very front of the idler arm in the middle. So anyways, so I'm trying to get the belt off, so I'm kind of pushing the idler up like that. That's okay. I mean, it's not great, but it's not a big deal. I eventually get, so I start using a pry bar on the Pro Charger pulley, and this is catastrophic failure number 2, because I actually damaged the threads on the pulley itself, and I feel like such an idiot. And so I'm really pissed off at myself for fucking this all up that badly. Now I got that belt off, take a look at this. Yep, damaged the threads. I'm an idiot. Whatever, let's just keep on keeping on. Let's get this idler off. Let's get the rest of this shit off. cut that off, I'm going to start undoing all of the bolts on this bracket and spill my coffee all over the floor. So at that point in time, I just walked away for a bit because I needed a break. So I've come back to this, and so I'm undoing all the bolts. I don't have my coffee mug on the table this time because, you know, I fucked up once. I shouldn't do it again. But yeah, so we'll start stripping all the stuff off of that bracket because I need that AC bracket off so I can modify it. So right here, I'm just kind of checking stuff out, verifying that, you know, the things that I need to cut out, I'm going to cut out, and everything else. Alright, so this is like catastrophic fuck up number 3. While I'm using this, I forget this is an open blade. I grab the end of it where the blade is, turn it on, and slice open my finger. So, yeah, that sucked. But whatever, went, cleaned it out, threw a band-aid on, and we're just going to keep on keeping on. We're not going to let a few setbacks stop progress. Just a small cut. So using the portable bandsaw, knock that out, and then use a crescent wrench because I can't really get in there with a grinder or anything. And then just kind of work the metal back and forth and break it off. And then take a flap disc and just clean off all the rough edges. Do a test fit, put the idler back on, make sure I got enough clearance. I don't think I do, so I kind of redo that whole thing a second time around without cutting my finger this time. So I got real tired of all my tools and nuts and bolts and everything being on the floor, so I kind of clean off my teardown cart and I bring it over and I just move all my tools onto it, so it's a little bit more convenient. so after all this test fitting, I'm going to chunk this out a little bit more. Now that I've got this opened enough that it's going to work for me, I'm going to start putting some of this stuff back together. And what I want to do right now is, since I know I need to replace that brass bushing, I want to install this and just check and see if I can replace the brass bushing with the idler on and kind of with the brackets on and everything. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just testing this out to see if I can in fact replace it, because if I can't, I don't want to put anything else back together. But if I can replace it, then okay, I can put a few things back together and, you know, it's not going to be a terrible experience. So this right here, I undo the adjustment bolt, I pull it off, and sure enough, at the end of this, I can pull the adjuster out, I can pull that brass bushing out, I'll be able to replace the brass bushing. It's gonna be tight and a little cramped and, you know, might take a bit of time and swearing, but I can do this with this in the car and with the access that I currently have. So that means I can go ahead and I can start putting the air conditioning compressor and the Pro Charger back on. But that is all the time we have for this video, so we will reserve putting the air conditioner compressor and the Pro Charger back on for another video. As always, if you have stuck around this long, I'd like to thank you for viewing, and we'll see you in the next one.